Pas de Paris, j'ai jamais rien produit sur Broadway. Ça balance pas mal à Paris, ça balance pas mal. Ça balance pas mal à Paris, ça balance aussi.
Most people, unless you happen to be a major sports fan, don't watch the Olympics anymore. You can't really blame them, seeing as how the Olympics has fully embraced the idea that confused and mentally ill men can compete against women at Olympic level sport. But even if you don't watch the Olympics and don't care much for sports, you very likely came across clips of the Paris Olympics opening ceremony, if you can even call it that, on Friday. At times, it looked less like an opening ceremony for the Olympic Games and more like a satanic ritual full of degeneracy and open mockery towards Christians. The Last Supper was recreated with a fat acceptance and gay rights activist who also happens to be a DJ playing the role of Jesus Christ. And on either side of the morbidly obese woman playing the role of Jesus Christ, the apostles were replaced by drag queens. Now really, that's just one part of a truly insulting and outrageous opening ceremony, which culminated in worldwide backlash to the point where the International Olympic Committee had to issue a formal apology. This is not a story about sports. This is a story about how the world's largest institutions, like the Olympics, think that it's acceptable and normal to treat Christians in this insulting way. To use one of the largest platforms in the world to insult the Christian faith. Now just imagine if the Olympic organizers decided to mock Islam and Muhammad instead of Jesus Christ at this opening ceremony. Well, actually, we don't need to imagine because we know what happens when you do that in France. Before we get into the show, be sure to drop a like on this video, help us out by subscribing to the True North YouTube channel, and the comment question for the episode is this: why did the Paris Olympics organizers openly mock Christians in the opening ceremony? Let me know your answer in the comment section below, and let's get into it. Well, we start the show with the disgraceful drag queen recreation of The Last Supper. Many people watching this on television live might have thought of themselves that they switched the channel to something totally different than an Olympics opening ceremony. No, this was part of the Olympics opening ceremony. Well, as you can imagine, it didn't get any better from that point on. You see, before that, it was like a genuine Olympics opening ceremony. The athletes were introduced by country, they were floating down the river in boats waving their national flags. So once that actual official part of the ceremony was taken care of, the degeneracy and blasphemy really began. The drag queen Last Supper recreation was followed by this performance of a bearded transvestite dancing and lip-syncing on stage. All right, that's quite enough of that. You then had what the Olympics described as a recreation of the Greek god Dionysus. But what most people saw on social media was a barely dressed, flamboyant French smurf. As you can see from this quick video, it wasn't exactly clear what they're trying to do.
What the hell is even that?
Now, during this opening ceremony performance, one of the French dancers standing behind a child had his testicles out of his shorts on television for everyone to see. Totally normal thing to happen at an Olympics opening ceremony, right? You then had a French metal band celebrating the beheading of Marie Antoinette. At the very least, it's extremely distasteful and quite strange. But I think most people looked at this and thought it was all quite demonic. To be fair, it really did fit in with the theme of the rest of the show. You then had, and I kid you not, a pale horse floating down the Seine River, a scene straight out of the book of Revelations, in which the pale horse brings about hell and death to the earth. As the opening ceremony was taking place, and as the open mockery and ridicule towards Christians was happening, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, couldn't help himself but publicly write on Twitter, "This is France." Yeah, well, no kidding. What a thing to celebrate. Mockery of Christians in front of a billion people. And as you could have guessed, Christians around the world, and even non-Christians, were outraged by what they saw at this opening ceremony performance. Now, none of this had anything to do with sport, or even celebrating French culture. seeing as how the centerpiece of this performance was a morbidly obese, fat acceptance activist and gay DJ. The Bishops' Conference of France came out publicly and said the following: "This ceremony unfortunately included scenes of derision and mockery of Christianity, which we deeply deplore." U.S. Speaker Mike Johnson wrote this on social media: "Last night's mockery of the Last Supper was shocking and insulting to Christian people around the world who watched the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games. The war on our faith and traditional values knows no bounds today, but we know that truth and virtue will prevail." And then he quotes a Bible passage from the book of John: "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." Now take a listen to the reaction from American Catholic Bishop Robert Barron.
You know, I love the Olympics, so I turn on the opening ceremonies of the Olympics. What do I see now? And it's in Paris, France, a city I love. I spent 3 years as a doctoral student there. What do I see but this gross mockery of the Last Supper? And I won't describe it any further. Just go online. It's gone viral. You can see it. But this France felt evidently, as it's trying to put its best cultural foot forward, the right thing to do is to mock this very central moment in Christianity where Jesus at his Last Supper gives his body and blood in anticipation of the cross. And so it's presented, though, as this gross, sort of flippant mockery. France, which used to be called the eldest daughter of the church, Paris, that gave us, Thomas Aquinas taught there, and Vincent de Paul was there, King Louis IX, St. Louis, France that sent Catholic missionaries all over the world. France, whose culture, and I mean the honoring of the individual and of human rights and of freedom, is grounded very much in Christianity, felt the right thing to do was to mock the Christian faith. You know, a question I would pose, we all know the answer to it. Would they ever have dared mock Islam in a similar way? Would they ever have dreamed of mocking in this gross, public way a scene from the Quran? As I say, we all know the answer to that.
As far as we can tell, one of the only companies to pull all of their advertising from the Olympic Games happens to be a United States regional telecoms company called C Spire. After the disgraceful mockery of the Last Supper, C Spire immediately pulled all of their advertising and took their frustrations to social media. "We were shocked by the mockery of the Last Supper during the opening ceremonies of the Paris Olympics. C Spire will be pulling our advertising from the Olympics." Marion Maréchal, a French member of European Parliament, also took her frustrations to social media. "To all the Christians of the world who are watching the Paris 2024 opening ceremony and felt insulted by this drag queen parody of the Last Supper, know that it is not France that is speaking, but a left-wing minority ready for any provocation." Now, the reaction to this recreation of the Last Supper from social media users across the world was swift and relentless. Take a look at this video posted to social media, sharing the video I originally posted by a user called Clint Russell from the Liberty Lockdown podcast. This video has over 29 million impressions on social media. This is crazy. Opening your event by replacing Jesus and the disciples at the Last Supper with men in drag. There are 2.4 billion Christians on earth, and apparently the Olympics wanted to declare loudly to all of them, right out of the gate, not welcome. Riley Gaines, a University of Kentucky swimmer who had to compete against Liam Thomas, the man who decided he could be a woman and compete against women, wrote the following: "Men in wigs front and center at the Olympic Games. No one ever tell me this group is oppressed or marginalized again." And UK journalist Piers Morgan also got in on the action. By the way, what the F was all this about? A drag queen mockery of the Last Supper at the Olympics? Would they have mocked any other religion like this? Appalling decision. We all know the answer to that. The answer is no. At no point would the Olympics ever dare to mock or criticize Islam in this way, especially in France. Because you know what happens in France when you make a cartoon of Muhammad? Well, you lose your life. You get beheaded in the street, or you get gunned down in your offices. Well, on Saturday, the Olympics actually felt as though they could defend this opening ceremony. They thought this was something that was good. It was positive. It celebrated French culture. The executive director of the Olympic Games, Christophe Duby, said that the opening ceremony displayed determination, vision, creativity, and that the ceremony broke the mold. No, it certainly broke the mold. It was an opening ceremony of an Olympic Games like no other. Seeing as how the Olympic Games opening ceremony is supposed to highlight the culture and history of the host nation, to highlight the history of the Olympic Games, and to celebrate sporting greatness, not whatever this is. Well, by Sunday, the pressure on the Olympics was simply too much, and they were forced to issue an apology to the world, an apology to Christians for this opening ceremony. Well, of course, they couldn't bring themselves to actually apologize to Christians. They had to dance around it and say, to anyone who was offended of any faith, we're sorry. They couldn't, of course, bring themselves to apologize to Christians directly. Here is Anne Deschamps, the communications director for the Paris Olympic Games, issuing that formal apology.
Clearly, there was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group. On the contrary, I think that Thomas Joly really tried to really intend to celebrate community tolerance. That was his word yesterday. And looking at the result of the polls that we shared, we believe that this ambition was achieved. If people have taken any offense, we are, of course, really, really sorry.
Now, the creative director of the opening ceremony, the mastermind of the whole performance, was a man named Thomas Joly. Well, they had to bring him out in front of the press to explain himself after the world reacted to his outrageous performance. And this is what he said: Republican ideas, like this. Inclusive ideas, like this. Ideas of kindness, like this. Ideas of solidarity, like this. Now, that's what the Olympics says. They had no intention of mocking Christians. They had no intention of recreating important biblical scenes in the Christian faith. However, the fat gay activist DJ Barbara Butch, that's the woman in the middle depicting Jesus Christ, went on social media and told the world that that is exactly what they were doing. In fact, she called that display the, quote, gay New Testament. On her Instagram account, she shared another user's Instagram story, writing, oh yes, the new gay testament. She then shared another user's Instagram story to her own Instagram page, which calls her Olympic Jesus. And then she also added the text at the bottom of this story saying Thomas Joly, the creative director of the opening ceremony, is president of the world. She then shared an NBC News article with the following headline: Drag performance resembling Last Supper at Olympic opening ceremony rankles conservatives. She also, it just keeps going. This woman also shared on her story another user on Instagram who made a thread showing the other recreations of the Last Supper and making the case that really it's not that bad that the Olympics did this because, Nintendo did this, Star Wars did this. So the centerpiece of the performance was on social media admitting that she was Olympic Jesus, that they recreated the Last Supper. She admitted that before the Olympics came out and said that actually all of that had nothing to do with the Olympics. It was actually the Greek god Dionysus, and the Olympics had no intention of offending anyone. The Olympics says they're really, really sorry if anyone was offended by what they had done. And you know what happened at the end of the Paris Olympics opening ceremony, just to really top it all off? The idiots who organized it managed to raise the Olympic flag upside down. Talk about the symbolism there. And you know what happened on Saturday night in Paris, a day after this open ridicule of Christianity took place, this open mockery of Jesus Christ? Well, Paris was struck by a major blackout in the city. They lost all electricity. Their power was shut off. In fact, some of the only lights that were still left on in Paris were the lights that shined on the Sacré-Cœur Cathedral overlooking the city. I guess that's what happens when you decide to insult God in front of billions of people. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for us today on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratio.